Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mount Shasta portal. I'm sure you're all feeling it. I need to mute my phone here if I can. There we go. Okay, since it is the fall equinox as we speak, 6:55 p.m., I'm going to start with a little drumming tonight. Hey, Glenn. Start by sharing the ceremony of sunset, as I associate the autumnal equinox with sunset, the winter solstice with winter, with midnight, and the spring equinox with sunrise, the summer solstice with noon. The medicine opportunity for me when I drum for the sunset, and as I watch the sun rotate out of view, because the sun never really sets, it just appears to do so. And the next time you watch a sunset, try to feel yourself rotating backwards away from the sun rather than the sun setting. And you'll actually be able to feel and experience the rotation of this Mother Earth that we're standing on. It's really a beautiful experience. The sunset for me, as the sun apparently sets, completing his outward journey, brightening the day, is my taking that beautiful solar energy, our local star, and igniting the star within. So that my commitment at that point is to become an internal sun in the darkness to others who may have lost their way. So the fall equinox is the beginning of our sensing the diminishing power of the outer sun. And here we have an opportunity then to begin to make that commitment to lighting the fire of our inner sun and taking that inner light into the darkness. It reaches its point of maximum intensity at the winter solstice with the black sun. But in that way, I feel when I really meditate on that and experience my inner sun and the opportunity it presents, my feeling of not looking forward to the diminishing outer sunlight wanes. And I begin to feel this dawning light inside me that increases as the darkness in the outer world increases. Can you all feel that? Yeah, the difference between the two? How many of you are like not looking forward to the diminishing of the light? Have a little trouble with that each time winter approaches. If you take to heart what I've just shared with you as a ceremony, as a commitment, your whole experience of the inner sun dawning may really shift your entire experience of the winter approaching. So as you all know, the sun just shifted into Libra just about a few minutes ago. Mercury shifted into Libra yesterday. And whenever the sun appears to change sign, It offers us an opportunity to explore our inner light, the star within, in a different field of experience. This normally is a 30-day period, but when the sun enters Libra, it enters the top half of the chart, of the natural wheel, and begins a 6-month period of our moving out beyond our own personal self-perfection, perfection of our self-understanding, to begin to explore relationship to other selves, the mirror self, with whom we can then dance to further deepen our understanding of the light within. This occurs every fall equinox and then continues through in the northern hemisphere to the spring equinox, when the sun enters Aries, and we begin a whole new 6-month cycle of self-discovery. Now, every sign has a celestial that's associated with it. It's said to rule that sign. Anybody know who's the ruler of Libra is? Venus. Yes. And Venus then becomes the guide to the entire sequence of the unfolding events in the top half of the circle. The bottom half of the circle of self-discovery starts with Aries, Mars, the drive to self-realize. The top half of the circle, starting with Libra, Venus, is that opportunity to share the depth of who we've become, who we've realized within ourselves, with the mirror self as the first step outward, beyond ourselves, to explore how we can dance in a wider circle. So the emphasis on Venus is very powerful throughout the entire top half of the chart, of the natural wheel. So Venus is associated with Shakti, Mars with Shiva. So we're shifting now from Shiva to Shakti. And Shakti is currently in Scorpio. Now, she's very influential during this phase or period, normally speaking. But because Uranus has entered Taurus, who rules Taurus? Venus. For the next 6 or 7 years, she's been carrying an extraordinarily more powerful influence than usual. And because of the positioning of the other celestials by dispositorship, this, she being in Scorpio, she ties back into Pluto, who ties back into Saturn. So this is an unusually powerful and consequential Venusian phase. As most of you know, Venus is also about to go retrograde on October 5th. So she remains in this position of extraordinary power, and then going direct in Libra, and finally coming out of the shadow in December in Scorpio. The entire 3 months remaining in 2018 are really Shakti-pod, the power of Shakti really appearing and showing herself with unusual intensity and power. Whenever we're dealing with Scorpio, as Inanna is associated with Venus, she descended into the underworld. In Scorpio, that is the descent into the underworld. So it's the signature of a powerful and consequential realization of self-discovery in terms of the value that we carry of ourselves and the passionate encounter with the deep truth of our being, which can then be reflected in passionate interchange or relationship to others. Venus enters Scorpio at the beginning of September. So we've already been experiencing her in the shadow phase leading up to October 5th, the preview. And during the preview period, there's a certain amount of pressure that's felt to move forward, to jump into new experience, because some part of us senses that we're about to go retrograde and opportunities will no longer be there. So most of us are really kind of tuned into the retrograde periods, But I pay particular attention during the phase leading up to the retrograde, because the uninformed actions, activities, or states of being that push us into a relationship with our outer environment prematurely are what then need to be reviewed during the retrograde period. So many may have been feeling moved deeply in the core of their being in relationship to their own passion, and need to encounter and transform through the intensity of that passion in the experience of the other. Scorpio also relates to the life and death process. And how many of you have explored the idea or word or quality of passion and really meditated on it? Yeah. That's Glenn with how many planets in Scorpio? Passion's your way of being. The deeply transformational portal, the initiatic portal of Scorpio, drives deep into our core, and when we touch our core, we experience passion. And when passion is experienced, all of our fears are blown away. They disappear, because we are so passionately engaged with an idea or another person that we lose all reservation. There's no more fear. And we give ourselves to that experience with 110% from the core of our being. So passion's medicine is to, as a trickster element, is to draw us beyond our fears, beyond the ordinary boundaries that we feel safe and comfortable with, into new experience that has the potential to transform us at our core. And since it's connected to Pluto, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, there's always an element of dying to a former way of being and jumping beyond our fears and reservations and risking all to embrace the experience of our passion at a greater depth than we'd ever known before. So, how many of you have had opportunities to do so arise in your life where you hesitated at the boundary and realized that, well, I may just lose everything if I get involved with this project or person? My entire way of life being challenged to step beyond the boundaries of what I've known, the comfortable, knowable, known world, into the unknown. When you're dealing with Scorpio, you're dealing with the unknown boundary of a depth of yourself that is attempting to emerge into the light of day. I just had a long talk with a friend of mine who's sitting here in the room, Christine, about her husband being a Venus in Scorpio and her son also being Venus in Scorpio. So she's lived the experience. I was listening very carefully to how her husband acted it out. And Scorpio is connected with our survivability, our safety, our security. Do we have the personal power to rally our core gifts and manifest in the world in a way in which we feel secure? We feel that we can make our way in the world. On the shadow side of Scorpio is a contest of power, where we give our power away to someone who presents themselves as our protector, someone who can ensure our safety, security, and welfare. And I'm going to get a little deep water here because I'm speaking of a female power, and I may be out of my depth here. So forgive me, ladies, in advance. But there's a certain kind of sorcery associated with Venus and Scorpio on the shadow side, because particularly in the less conscious phases of our patriarchal dominant era, women mastered a certain kind of sorcery in order to ensure their own survival and bind themselves to a man or male who had the ability to protect her and keep her safe. Men understood that as they're needing to present themselves as successful, as really a dominant male in their current society, who could then step in and protect that woman, that female, from the darker side of that particular society or civilization. So I'm sure some of you as women, and possibly men also, have had the experience of staying in a relationship because your own safety and survival was so dependent upon your partner that you could not leave, or you didn't have the courage to leave. That's the shadow side of Venus and Scorpio, where you feel like you will compromise your integrity for the sake of your own survivability, your own protection. So is anyone dealing with that issue in the room here tonight? Yeah. Okay. I'm diving a little deep here. So during this period of time, if you notice that your integrity is being compromised, but there's a great reward being offered, in order for you to compromise your integrity and you feel like, wow, if I make this deal or form a relationship with this person, I'll be set for life. I'll be safe and secure in this world. But it tends to backfire because you lose your sense of integrity and your own personal power resting in the core of you. Are you all following me on this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Venus in Scorpio can, because she's in the sign of her detriment, which is saying that she's having a difficult time there. Because beauty, Venus heals as the power, as the beauty way, the power of beauty itself. It can be physical beauty or the beauty of the heart. But Venus offers beauty as a way of healing. In Venus in Scorpio, though, she's like stepping into her own power and saying, I need to heal myself in the underworld. Inanna was actually killed by her own sister in the underworld. She went through 7 stages of, at each stage she lost another piece of her clothing, and she wound up completely naked in the underworld to face herself and her own value, to know that she had value in her own right, apart from her attractive nature to other men or women, if you're lesbian, in the world around her on a societal level. So whenever we're dealing with Venus, we're dealing deeply with how much we love ourselves and we value ourselves. We value the intrinsic beauty of our own nature. And for us men with Venus and Scorpio, we are being challenged to recognize that we by nature are attractive, and we don't fall prey to the shadow side of Venus, as some men do, in feeling that they need to be validated in their attractiveness through having a beautiful partner or counterpart to reflect back into society and be admired for that. So that's the shadow side of Venus on the male side. So because I'm spending some time on this, because this is such a dominant initiatic portal for the remainder of the year, and with Uranus looking to Venus as his guide for the next 6 or 7 years, the Shakti energy is being the primary awakener of humanity through the next 6 to 7 year period. Uranus as the awakener. It's in Taurus. It's direct, tangible, and it's essential. It's connected to our embodiment. Taurus being the sign of full embodiment. So those of us on the ascension path, or who are seeking to get out of their bodies in order to awaken, may have a revelation that maybe this is the time to descend fully into our bodies, Uranus and Taurus, to experience the gift of embodiment and the beauty of and blessing of being honored to have incarnation in this world at this time of enlightenment. How many of you have realized that it's on the descent that you really perfect your mountaintop experience? And that your journey is not complete until you ascend from the mountain and fully incarnate, fully embody. And beauty, as a medicine, is the power that invites your spirit to fully incarnate. So whenever we experience beauty, we become fully present on the physical level. So women in general, as Shakti, the beauty way, offer us, all of us, the opportunity to really begin to enjoy the incarnational experience. And through that enjoyment, we then are encouraged to fully incarnate. Because if you're not enjoying this life, if you're not enjoying yourself, you're going to want to split. You want to, leave your body. And take on methods or paths that encourage you to leave your body. So my whole experience of what being spiritual is has been transforming throughout my journey, realizing that the mountaintop experience is only half the journey. And until I descend from the mountain, the circle is not complete. So with Uranus and Taurus, our relationships to pleasure, enjoyment, gifting, because Taurus is also connected with gifting one another, of sharing this experience in beauty, is really the opportunity through which we awaken as humanity. The shadow side of Taurus then would be identifying with what you own, Taurus, as your primary means through which you validate yourself. The bigger your house or the nicer your car, the more you are validated by the dominant cultural sorcery present in America especially. But as you awaken to the beauty and gift of pleasure in this world, then you enjoy it as an opportunity to share that joy and that pleasure with others, rather than being defined by it. So Venus being in her opposite sign of Scorpio from Taurus is taking a journey into the underworld to redefine the depth to which she experiences her own value, her own beauty, in the midst of being challenged by these passionate forces that may seek to take advantage of her in order to validate their own attractiveness. So I'm sure all of us have explored some parts of this topic throughout your lives, especially the women here. But now it's like becoming a conscious, intentional, initiatic portal to which we reclaim the healing power of our essential selves. And particularly for the women in the room, you are our guides now. And it's the depth to which you experience and realize the healing power of beauty that will liberate you from being defined by the experience of others or their response to you. Any questions or comments at this point? I've either lost all of you or been enlightened, so I don't know which one.
I have a comment. I want to know, like, if your journey is really not to help awaken humanity, it could be that you're just here to hold space for the awakenings, right? Or do we all have to help awaken humanity? Like the children that are coming now, that are so enlightened, could your mission just be holding space for them?
That could be part of it, but each person's mission is different. Your presence here on planet Earth is what's doing the healing. You have a vibrational frequency that's affecting a lot more than you realize. What you do as a consequence of that is just the overflow. But just your courage to have raised your hand and come down to planet Earth and walked amongst these pretty crazy humans You need to acknowledge yourself for that. If you do nothing else, you just showed up. So sometimes the most important thing for us to do is just show up. Be present. The greatest gift you can give to another is your presence. And then whatever greater gift you carry will then reveal itself gradually over time as an overflow, an abundance that just floods out of you. And you can't help but share with others around you because it's overflowing in your being. But that transforms over time, so I wouldn't be too concerned about identifying it or even deciding whether, it's your job to help humanity. You're already doing it. We're all helping humanity. Sometimes by showing them what not to do. Yeah. You want to suffer? I'll show you how to suffer. So you don't have to suffer yourself. I'm going to demonstrate it really clearly. But go ahead.
So you mentioned about Uranus and Taurus. What are your thoughts that goes back into Aries for like 4 months? Or do you kind of feel like it's already entered, or some astrologers say it's not really going to enter until the spring?
Yeah, you're correct about that. Uranus is on the cusp of Aries Taurus. So as we've gotten the preview of coming attractions, then as Uranus re-enters Aries, we'll be doing a review of the last 7 years and how how much integrity we've had in dancing with Shiva before the Shakti wave really begins to build as an obvious and apparent avenue of awakening. And the other celestial, not a planet, but an asteroid, Chiron, is also on the cusp of changing sign from back from Aries into Pisces. That's a 51-year cycle, and that to me is the big one. Chiron shifts back into Pisces. I believe it's next Tuesday. Before I go on to that, is there anyone else who has anything to share about what I've shared so far? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to share. Today, I went for a walk up to Great Boot. It was a good 2-hour walk, and it was kind of interesting. So I was having a conversation with the beings of light, and so what Starwalker was talking about is like a lot of that had happened today. I had that Scorpio in me, and it was like that underworld part, the dark side came in. It was like this temptation of, anyhow, so like you said, it happened to me up in the mountain today. And then I turned around and said, no, I don't want that lifestyle no more. I want to be in the more positive part of that part of Scorpio of that awakening. But then I turned around and I had a discussion with the beings of light, and I said, but what about having both, the balance? Why does it have to be either this or that? Why can't we enjoy both and bring them together? And then this interesting man at the end, when I was ready to go in my car, looked me in the eye and he said, now remember, you're going down to the foothill of the mountain into town, and you have to now take exactly what you said. You said you have to take what's here and bring it down there. And then I kind of questioned if he was real, but he was a being of light. He carried a lot of the Lemurian energy in him.
Nice.
But yes, a lot what you spoke about, this first part, is very true. It happened up there.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it's I admire people more so for their descent and their courage to come down from the mountain and put what they've experienced on the mountain to work in a tangible way over time, consistently. That's where, to me, a person's true spirituality demonstrates itself. I mean, a lot of us have had some pretty wild top of the mountain experiences. But then I asked them, well, what have you done with it? How has it reflected back into the ordinary experience of your life? And how has it aided you in finding the extraordinary within the ordinary? Because what appears to be ordinary is just jam-packed with extraordinary. We're just not noticing it most of the time. So we'll seek a mountaintop experience to remind us of what the extraordinary is and the magical is, in order to take that magical power quality back down the mountain into the ordinary experience of our lives as a consistent and tangible practice. And that's, to me, where our spirituality is perfected. Do you have something to add?
One of the things I like with Venus in Scorpio, it tends to stress it a little bit, but it's going back into its own sign.
Right.
To sort of refresh.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice that way. And then it ends up staying in opposition to Uranus 3 times. And as Uranus backs into Aries and Venus backs into Libra, it still maintains that opposition through this whole period here. It's kind of nice. Exciting sparks.
Yeah, it's something to meditate on, with Uranus's guide being opposing him, 3 times. And that balance being achieved as a counterpart to his own awakening. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, the Venus will return to her own sign pretty much most of December, most of November, just about all of November. Turn direct in the middle of November. So the idea of mirror dancing, having taken the first foray into passionate encounter that has the potential to completely transform us, our experience of who we are, will then back up into Libra in November. So then we have the opportunity to reevaluate proper relationship to a partner who can truly dance with us. So we make initial forays seeking to have powerful transformative experiences of a passionate nature with another. We reach a certain depth with them and realize we can't go any further because there's more inner work that needs to be done. That the Venus retrograde will then drive us deeper into our core, our personal empowerment, so that we can access a depth of power within ourselves that can match the power of the experience we're having with another. Because if your connection with the core isn't at the depth required, the power or the passion of the encounter will overwhelm you, and you will tend to lose yourself within it, because the depth to which you're connected with your own core passion can't match the the explosive quality of the Kundalini activation it experiences when you encounter someone who activates your Kundalini. In order to experience a truly transforming relationship with another, the depth to which you've realized yourself needs to match the depth of the experience you're having with that. Otherwise, you will be subsumed or even captured by the intensity of the attraction. And then you'll have to fight your way out. Anybody have that experience before? Wait a minute, I'm losing myself here. I need some time. Back off, And so you take the time then to reacquaint yourself with your own rhythm, your own personal power. You achieve that at a deeper level. That's the retrograde. And then you're ready then to say, okay, now I'm ready, because I've come home to myself at a greater depth, to enter into a greater depth of relationship with another, with whom my Kundalini is activated, and have a profoundly transforming experience that is life-changing. So this whole process can be a little challenging at times, particularly, like Glenn said, opposite Uranus and Taurus, where we're just here to experience pleasure. And when things get complicated, we feel like, I just don't have the energy for it. It's just too much. And yet, Inanna in the underworld is saying, you want to completely transform yourself and experience the depth of yourself? you've never known even existed before? Well, call in a Heyoka counterpart who will just activate your Kundalini, and let's see if you have the courage to dive deep, and how deeply you have realized your own personal power, because that is frontlines work to me. That's where you find out how deeply you have become self-realized. If you can encounter and engage with another great passion and intensity without losing yourself. So, like I said in the beginning, I feel like I'm operating above my pay grade, because this is a very female portal. So, you ladies, be patient with me. So I hope I'm making sense. So
You're doing great. Said
okay.
Another man.
So yeah, it's really an opportunity for us, male or female, to embrace the depth of passion within ourselves in a way we've never known before during this whole period of time. That the first run is a little bit testy because we're in unknown country, but once Venus returns to Scorpio in December, direct, we'll have a much better understanding of the initiatic cycle, and then experience the high side of Venus in Scorpio, which is, it can express its sexual healing, deep, profound knowing of being seen, because whenever you connect with someone on a scorpionic level, you become visible to another in a way you've never been visible to another before. That's why Scorpio is connected with sexuality, but normally sexuality is just an act of unconscious behavior, and the two never truly become visible to one another on the soul level. So that's the opportunity of this initiatic portal, to finally realize the beauty and depth of yourself visible to another, and through that co-experience then have a deeply transformative initiation into the depth of your own passion. And this is intimately connected with especially with Uranus involved, the activation of the Kundalini. So Uranus tends to be the lightning bolt that activates the Kundalini. So enjoy the ride, everyone.
And when does Uranus go back to Taurus?
Into Aries?
No, when
When
is
does
the
it
thing
go
go
back to
February of 2019, and finally, Uranus finally fully enters Taurus.
Like March 6th.
Yeah. Yeah, Uranus re-enters Aries at the second week of November through beginning of February. Right after the election,
Yesterday, Michael Moore put out a new movie
Uh-huh.
called 11/9.
Right.
Big movie with 9/11.
Right.
11/9, the election.
Mm-hmm.
It's about Trump.
Yeah. And and if the results don't go the way they expect them to go, then we'll have Uranus in Aries. The revolution will begin. So.
It goes into Aries on election day.
On election day. So yeah, there you go.
And they said when we were choosing presidents that Trump was kind of like the embodiment of Saint Germain. Have you heard anything like that?
No. That's above my pay grade. Yeah, I don't want to get off on Donald Trump right now.
No. But that's what they said was the person that was saying, and I can't believe it, and I cannot believe it, but
Yeah.
Is there any influence from Mercury at this time?
Yeah, Mercury just entered Libra.
Okay.
So we'll have the intensity of this Venus and Scorpio initiatic cycle will build as Mercury enters Scorpio in October, and then the Sun enters Scorpio October 23rd. Venus will still remain in Scorpio, so that from the middle to stretch at the end of October until Venus re-enters Libra in the beginning of November will be a signature time of heightened intensity, peak intensity of this theme that I've been wandering into this evening. As I mentioned earlier, one of the big shifts for me is Chiron shifting back into Pisces on Tuesday. And I believe he remains in Pisces for the remainder of the year into the beginning of 2019. Now, whenever a celestial changes sign, like I said earlier, it offers a completely different opportunity to awaken in a field of consciousness that normally is more advanced than the one it's just navigated. But because it's going retrograde, it's going backward into Pisces from Aries. It's saying we are not finished yet with the initiatic process, Chiron, that Pisces represents, the old cycle. And particularly when a celestial goes back and forth over the zero Aries point, which is the very beginning of the natural wheel of the zodiac, it's not dealing with just those two signs, it's dealing with an entire cycle of that celestial. So Chiron has a 51-year cycle. So we're dealing with the completion and illumination of an entire cycle of exploring particular aspects, wounded aspects of our human nature that offer the opportunity to develop a medicine that will serve others. Chiron for me is the celestial associated with contracts we make as medicine people before we're born to experience a particular wound that humanity is struggling with. So that through that direct experience, our giveaway, we then have direct experiential understanding of the nature of that wound. And through our own healing process, then we're able to reach others who share that similar experience that we never could have reached before. So go ahead.
I just did the math while you were sitting there and went back 51 years. That was like the summer of love, which is sort of 67, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You're in 18, so it's kind of interesting that we've had a 51-year acting out of whatever healing or non-healing that's had on the collective psyche. So I just wanted to share that.
Right. And that juncture there was the shift from Pisces to Aries, from seeking this high, in Pisces, these highly altered states of consciousness, so we can make contact with that love that goes beyond boundary in Pisces, which started then an inspired radical 8-year period from 68 onward of Me Too, of taking our own values seriously, taking our own self-fulfillment seriously, and becoming the me generation. That's Chiron and Aries.
And seeing it through the prism of healing, but
Yeah.
healing the psyche of the planet.
Right, exactly. And particularly women at that time, the whole
Absolutely.
really claim their right to pursue their own pleasure and their own self-fulfillment, Aries. So it's interesting that the whole cycle is now beginning again with a very strong and powerful female movement. Women in particular running for office and claiming their right to be fulfilled. Mars, Chiron and Aries, to have the life that they want. Mars. So during this period of time, Chiron retrograde in Pisces and then going direct, in December, it's an extraordinarily high frequency enlightenment phase of our dealing with or exploring our relationship to the higher power. So Chiron in Pisces, it's related to a wound. What would the nature of the wound look like in Pisces? Anybody have any ideas? Okay. We've been experiencing it for the last 8 years. And it's interesting that during this last 8 years, we've seen that the rise of the religious right really become dominant. And Pisces is connected to our relationship to the divine. It's the gateway to the heavenly worlds. So Chiron in Pisces may be associated with what I call religious spirits. Those false gods who appear to be heavenly and divine, who we give ourselves our devotion to, and then find ourselves disillusioned or disappointed in a way in which we realize we've been serving a false god or goddess. And through that disillusionment, then, the hero's journey is then is a quest to break through to an authentic relationship to the higher power, the source itself. And as you were mentioning, that Chiron and Pisces phase in the 60s was started in 1960 and took us all the way through 68, and geez, I was spacing out. Tune in, Timothy Leary. Yeah, Timothy Leary actually went down to Mexico in 1960 or 61 and was one of the first Westerners to be introduced to the mushroom cult.
Right.
And that really started kicking off the whole Piscean enlightenment phase or experiential phase, where we just threw out all the world religions and said, we're going to storm heaven here. Whatever means possible, we're just going to blow the lid off. That's the Chiron in Pisces wound, where the established religions, those and the people or religions who presented themselves as agents of the divine, disillusion us in such a way that we then finally realize that we need to establish our own direct relationship to the higher power and learn discernment in terms of who we devote ourselves to or what we devote ourselves to as a path to the divine. So we'll have a chance to review that whole inspirational matrix through the rest of the year into early next year, so that by the time we arrive at Chiron going back into Aries, we'll have this confidence within ourselves that we are hearing the voice of the divine, we're divinely directed, and then we can really start charging forward in the overflow of that, because Pisces creates the inspiration that actually drives Aries to really start moving forward into a whole new domain. Go ahead, Glenn.
To back that up, the chart for the autumn equinox has Pisces rising with Chiron right there in the first house, out of sign.
In Mount Shasta, Pisces rising.
Mount Shasta.
Right.
Pisces rising with the moon and Neptune in Pisces in the 12th house. That's like, multiple Pisces energy.
So since the equinox kind of governs a 3-month phase or period, it will take us all the way to the winter solstice. So we may expect a lot of people, now that the smoke is cleared, to show up here looking to make that contact directly with the higher power. Go ahead.
You brought up women coming into power. Big example of that is Chelsea Manning running for Senator of Maryland. People know Chelsea Manning.
Yeah.
Bradley Manning. And how would you add on, because to me the biggest thing of the 60s was Uranus and Pluto, together. And we just had the square of that 7 times recently. How would you put that, combine that with?
The Uranus-Pluto conjunction of 65 was in Virgo.
Opposite Saturn.
Yeah, opposite Saturn. So that creates a seed point. And then Uranus-Neptune conjunction followed. in 1993. So Uranus went from Pluto to Neptune in that 1965 to 1993. So those seed points are very active. The one that's being activated now is actually the Uranus-Neptune conjunction in late Capricorn. Transiting Pluto has been going back and forth over that 1993 conjunction 3 times. So that is like it's in a sense, it's like a Pluto-Uranus-Neptune conjunction going on right now. And that's why we're seeing this contest of power on the worldly level to determine who is going to control the global sorcery that dominates the world. This is kind of a signature of worldwide sorcery. Each culture has a certain kind of sorcery at its heart, at its core, and it casts a spell on the people involved in that particular culture, so that their actions and their ways of being, their moral structures conform to that spell. So this Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto is like whose cultural spell will dominate the entire human race. That's why it's been so crusading with Donald Trump trying to crusade the idea or mentality of America being, great again. He's saying our cultural sorcery is superior to everyone else's, and that's with Pluto involved, where we're finding that the shadow side of casting spells on others is being revealed, and
Massive.
yeah, and Uranus having entered Aries 7 years ago really started to break it up, and with Uranus and Taurus, the direct experience of the level to which we experience pleasure in our lives and enjoy our experience here is really breaking the cultural spell, because whenever Uranus is involved, like with Chelsea Manning, you're dealing with the energy of the person rather than their appearance. So you get beyond their appearance. That's why the 60s are so powerful, because we learned how to relate directly to the energy of a person rather than their
Objectivity.
yeah, their physical appearance. And we went with the energy rather than the idea of what a person's physical appearance or station in life represented, which is the cultural sorcery. That answer your question? Do you have any ideas, insight on that?
Well, there's so much around that.
Mhm.
The 60s, that was the explosion. A lot of us here were there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I see it primarily as busting Saturn, Uranus and Pluto opposite Saturn, breaking all the old stereotypes, so that the powers that were dying, they became the lamestream, so many changes.
Yeah.
That was the big...
Back then, Uranus and Pluto and Neptune were the biggies. But since about the year 2000, we've been discovering all these other celestials out there, particularly Eris, that have blown the door open so mind-blowing that we can't even imagine what's possible. So they're no longer as dominant as they used to be, because of these higher order celestials appearing that are offering opportunities to expand in ways we've never even imagined before. Particularly with Eris. Yeah, Eris and Aries, combining with all of our charts. Everyone incarnate right now has Uranus and Aries, opening up a whole new way of being. But Eris herself wasn't discovered until 2005. So we're just now beginning to become aware of the nature of that opportunity as phrase. Because until a planet's discovered, it doesn't become available to the general populace as a consciousness.
And then the astronomers demoting Pluto. All you have to do is get one astrologer reading and they'll see that Pluto makes a difference.
Yeah. But I do like the fact that that Ceres was promoted. Which is kind of interesting, because if you know the myth, Ceres was the only one who had the courage as a woman to descend into the underworld and stand as Pluto's equal. So they're both minor planets now, which is kind of cool, on that level. I love that. Go ahead.
So
So this legalization of marijuana by Canada and other countries, which planets are involved in that, and is that like a short-term or long-term phenomenon?
The legalization of marijuana,
Yeah.
that's part of, I believe, the Neptune in Pisces transit, which started in earnest in 2012, 2011, 2012. Our right to open the portals to the heavenly worlds in whatever way we are guided and we choose. So, and Neptune will remain in Pisces for another 5 years, I believe. Is that right, Glenn?
Into 24, into 25, all the planets change signs.
Yeah, so the mid-20s, right. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it has to do with Uranus and Taurus.
Could you come forward? I can't hear you.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think it has to do with Uranus and Taurus also, a little bit, just because Taurus is like the natural world, and money and commerce, and Uranus is like breaking free of old and revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that is also playing a role.
Uranus and Taurus.
Yeah, because I think that, Taurus is the natural world, and marijuana is natural.
Mm-hmm.
Taurus is about commerce, and only now is marijuana really going to become a good. Like Coke is thinking about launching like beverages with pot in it, like it's going to become
Right.
something that's
Mm-hmm.
just something we buy and
Mm-hmm.
make money off of.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it, because before it was like only, it used to be it's kind of a revolution of what is like groundbreaking. That's not really groundbreaking anymore, right?
Mhm.
It's just kind of
Evolution.
leaving. Yeah, it's just like weed is like a food product now, so
Mhm.
that's my opinion.
Yeah, Uranus, what's your name?
Sunita?
Sunita was talking about Uranus and Taurus revolutionizing the monetary system. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, in general, but I think it also has to do with things like pot and botanicals and anything from natural.
From the natural world, yeah. The natural world as an awakening agent. And Uranus, it's like every celestial has a sign it has most difficulty with because it's so alien to its own nature. Uranus has the most difficulty with Taurus. It's said to be in its fault. Because Taurus by nature is very fixed and incarnate.
I think the word groundbreaking, I think that.
Yeah,
Uranus
Taurus is the ground. Groundbreaking would be Uranus. Groundbreaking. And what is groundbreaking?
New Earth, it could be New Earth.
An earthquake.
All Earth.
It literally breaks up the ground. Okay. And through the crack, then we see all these gems that were hidden down there. Okay. But because Taurus is associated with our personal resources, Uranus would suggest alternative currencies. Because Uranus is always based on mutual community involvement. So all these groups of people that are coming up as a leading edge to offer new, exciting, and unusual forms of exchange of value, which translates as an alternative currency, are also part of that wave, and it's already it's building with Coinbase and other vehicles to offer us that new way of cooperating together and realizing how we can exchange value for value. Go ahead.
The last time Uranus was in Taurus, we had some of the largest food shortages in the world. And it was after the Dust Bowls, and it was the Victory Gardens, and all this kind of stuff. And so I talk about Uranus and Taurus this time being a disruption of the food supplies to drive people back more toward vitality gardens and organic food, the bioenergetics and so on. But it is a return to the value of the products that come from the earth and the food.
Yeah. And on a more esoteric level, because Uranus is connected with the first frequency you experience when you go out of body, the higher frequency that's discarnate. I would connect always Uranus with your team, your guides that are there, offering you a more awakened and enlightened view. And it's highly electrical. But in Taurus, for me, it's the awakening power of the nature spirits, the devas, or those who weave the material world as awakeners. And as you said, Glenn, going back to the garden or going back to the farm, you have the opportunity then to listen to the natural forces on the land as a teacher or as an awakener. And that becomes a teaching all by itself. So returning to the land and learning how to work with the natural world as a teacher, as an awakener, is a big part of the opportunity for the next 7 years also. I don't know if we ever answered your question back there, but we'll just keep going. Anyone else? Let's just take one. Oh yeah, almost forgot. Save the best for last. The Venus going retrograde on October 5th at around noon Pacific time. She then begins to wander backward toward the sun in the sky from Earth's point of view. And then she dives into the underworld with the next full moon on October 24th for actually October 22nd through to November 1st. She becomes invisible in the underworld. And in the middle of that deep dive, she reaches what's called the Venus star point. The Venus star points form a 5-pointed star in the heavens. It's an 8-year cycle, but a 5-fold process. The last Venus star point was on January 8th of this year in Capricorn, conjunct Pluto. So since Donald Trump emerged on the scene as a representative of that Pluto conjunct the Venus star point, the Venus is also is always connected with our sense of being valued. Conjunct Pluto in Capricorn is being valued for being the alpha male, the biggest bully on the block, who dominates everyone else around you, and regardless of what it takes, always quote unquote wins. You know, this whole idea of winning.
Watch what Melania does.
Right. Right. So with the Venus star point shifting on October 26th at 3 degrees of Scorpio, the Venusian process that we've been talking about will be highlighted for the next 9 months to follow. And that occurs on October 26th. And then we'll get into October at my next talk. We'll get into November at my next talk, because Venus then becomes the morning star on November 1st. But that whole period of time, the end of October, is a really powerful, beautiful window to deepen into the experience of what I've been sharing this evening. So each one of you, if you've managed to call a partner with whom to dance, feel honored by that, to be a catalyst through which you can explore the greater mystery of your own being. And yeah. The one final note on the full moon on Monday. Were you saying that Mars was conjunct Chiron? Or the moon is conjunct Chiron on the full moon? Tuesday's full moon will be at 2 degrees of Aries. And the moon will conjunct Chiron at 4:09 p.m. The full moon is at 7:52 p.m. The moon enters Aries on Monday. I'm sorry, it's not Tuesday, it's Monday. Monday the 24th. The moon enters Aries at 4:04 p.m. Pacific time, and that's when the energy really starts rushing in. And she will reach fullness right as the sun sets. And the moon will conjunct Chiron right as the moon enters Aries at about 4 p.m. So the highlight this last phase of Chiron in Aries, of really claiming our right to be, will be highlighted by this full moon. So if you're conscious with the full moon, you realize that she tends to push things a little. And so, and Aries tends to be activated by someone pushing against you. So just be conscious about who you call in to push against you for you to claim your right to be. And not take it too personally. So it promises to be a very enlightening full moon. And we will be, Sophia's called a drum circle on the mountain on Monday evening. For those of you who have the drum or feel guided to come and join us, you're welcome to join us. Anyone else? To add or comment? Glenn?
Question. Do you know the Via Combusta?
Within 17 minutes of conjunction?
The 15 Libra to 15 Scorpio. Venus is retrograde in the Via Combusta this time too.
And what is your take on Via Combusta?
Via Combusta means path of fire.
Path of fire, okay.
And so adding it to the Scorpio, that brings it more passion. It's fire and water, you know, it's more steam.
Yeah.
I wrote an article for this stuff, and I said, ladies, start your engines. And gentlemen, get in the back seat.
Or fasten your seatbelt. Well, I hope we don't combust, so maybe that's a good thing. Anyone else? Okay, brothers and sisters. Much love.